Hey guys, Cole with EMF. Real quick, we're gonna go through motors. We've done this video in the past, but I'm kind of just gonna go through again since we have the GS11 here. Just wanted to line the motors up again since I have them, and some of the stuff tore open so you guys can see. We're also gonna talk about like chains and gear ratios real quick, just because I know I have another video. If you wanna watch a full video on it, check it out. But we're gonna touch base on like what I recommend for what motor, what ratios, what size chains, yeah, all that good stuff. So let's jump into it. All right, so we can see here we have like our common Razor motors. These motors are kind of getting used across the board, but I specialize in Razor parts, so we're going to talk Razors. Now I kind of laid them out here from like right going left from least powerful into the most powerful. The My 1020, this is what we've used for, you know, I've been in this game for over 5 years, so we've seen this motor a lot. It's had slight changes through time. It actually used to be better and was able to push more when it was in this version, but those are obsolete now. We can't find them anymore. So we actually used to also see the fan within those motors. They are also gone. We don't have those anymore. The 3000 watt and the 2000 watt, in my opinion, have gotten the same testings out of using it on 72 volt. So I don't think it matters whatsoever. I've used 48 volt, 1800 watt motors on my 72 volt builds forever. So I've never really had any difference as far as wattage or power or longevity. And some of you OG guys know that these motors actually outlasted all these newer motors with the fan. We kind of think these were better and we can't seem to get back to it. Windings also seemed a little more tight, and I think that they had a little bit more. We can see like with this RazorCrew My 1020 out here, we have really loose windings, just sloppy put together. So my 1020s all come from Kunray, whether it says Vivor, RazorCrew, everything really is from Kunray. I believe they have the patent for these My 1020s, so it all comes from the same place. Just inside, we can see the rotors. Now, talking about rotors, this is where these motors kind of differ from these motors. These are what we refer to as IPM motors, meaning the magnets are embedded inside the rotor. This is the rotor, which obviously is spinning your guys' sprocket. But we can see these magnets are only held on with these straps. You can also see I've broken the magnets because they're magnets, and if they magnet to something, they will crack and break. So be careful if you ever have these out for any work or anything like that. So when we start seeing higher RPMs and we use field weakening to spin these rotors faster than they were intended, these magnets kind of have a chance of breaking, slipping out, or not lasting as long, to where an IPM motor, magnets are inside, and a lot of times in a V pattern. I'll pop a picture up, but you can see the V pattern has the magnet inside of the rotor, where it would actually be inside of this thicker steel part. Now you guys can tell I don't have RazorCrew actual, their EC4P or whatever. Those motors are the same as these surface magnet motors. He just put a bigger sleeve on to help hold these in better. The IPM motors always trumps a surface magnet motor. Any of the standard bigger bikes, like our Alta Sigma, is actually a hairpin IPM motor. The Arctic Leopard, your Surons, E-Rides, you name it, they're IPMs. As well as like electric cars. Most electric cars, as far as Teslas, you know, like a Prius, GM's electric vehicles, Toyotas, everybody's pretty much using IPM motors, a lot of them being hairpin motors because they're more efficient. If you watch my Altus video, you'll hear me get into those kind of more details on a hairpin. Essentially, the IPM motor is what you're after if you want longevity and higher power and torque. So before I had these wrong, but from right to left here, we can kind of see most expensive coming into the cheaper motors, as well as the most power able to push out of the motor coming into the least power able to push out. Now, all of these motors do have the same bolt-in style pattern, with the difference of these two motors do have bottom bolt-in ones. This FW11 is like the Gen 1. This is probably within the first 100 that were made. It's definitely a different style. You're not going to see it looking like this when you do look it up. This one's very outdated. These really are, you know, as far as high output but compact size motors to fit into Razors and smaller bikes like that, because we are limited with our swing arm space here. So talking about space, if you're someone like me and you have bigger tires or bigger motors, you're gonna be restricted if the motor is bigger than a My 1020 that was stock. I know I've gotten these things really tight. Through the years, we've used these RSF wheels on like these MX bikes, and you literally get to where I can fit like a debit card in between there. So it's really tight. So when we talk about it getting that tight, obviously when we start seeing these fins, size is gonna matter. So we will jump into checking the size on these. Obviously the My 1020 is the skinniest. The FW11, when Jordan was kind of designing and developing that motor with Sotion, he did really try to keep that motor dialed in as far as staying in the same My 1020 size in the center. So that FW11, as far as putting out high power and still being within the same My 1020 size circumference of the circle there, that's actually impressive what they've packed into this. The rotors inside of these are also going to be bigger than these. The EC4P also has a bigger rotor, I believe, but just has the magnets still on the outside. If I'm totally wrong, drop in the comments and let me know, because I do not have one. Now talking power, these stock Vivor kits with these basic silver controllers, you guys obviously have seen, they're only going to give you so much power. There's no tuning capabilities like a Far Driver, a Flip Sky, or a Kelly. We have different controllers that kind of have more apping tuning capabilities, and we can kind of play with that more. Along with that, really your wattage comes down to amps times volts. So it depends on what your amp output on your battery is. So again, when we're talking these bigger, higher amp output motors, if your battery is only capable of putting out 80 continuous amps, these motors are you're not going to see the full potential of these motors. They're going to seem they need the power to operate and perform how they are made. So if you don't have the amps to give them, you're not going to see the top speeds and the torque that everyone's talking about. These silver controllers that come with these My 1020s out of the Vivor sets, a lot of times actually, are limited to what amps they are. So a lot of those are 33 amps, which really puts you around that 1800 watts. That's why they're labeled as 1800 watt sets. 3000 watt, they're throwing 60 amps on those controllers, giving you your 3000 watts of those motors. Again, I've used those all twisted throughout. Something else to talk about is the orange corded Electro & Co. copies from Cunray. Cunray and Electro & Co. made these motors together a while ago. It's what they sell. It's what you can find on Alibaba from Cunray, Econic from Hot Packs everywhere. It's debatable if this motor is better than this, if this motor is better than this motor. In my opinion, it's not. I think they're pretty much the same exact motor from my testing and from taking them apart and looking inside of all these motors. Whatever one you find cheaper, I think that's what you go with. If you're throwing more than 80 amps at these things and not maintaining their heat, they're going to overheat and fry. Anything over 160 degrees is where we start seeing melting. 180 degrees internally, you're going to start melting your phase wires, and this stuff will all start to fry. These motors really around the same temps as where you start seeing 180 degrees, they say to stay away from. I've had customers and followers say they've had these to like 300 degrees and it still runs. Be very careful. I recommend monitoring your heat. I have my EMF 12 volt plug and play systems that have a temp gauge that I physically just tape on here, and it tells me what the temp of the shell is, and I can kind of monitor where I'm at. Now the KR5V, I personally have pushed this right around, it seems like it tops around 12,000 watts, and that's throwing around 150 amps at it. It gets hot super fast. I do not recommend doing that. Cunray and myself recommend 80 to 100 line amps max to this motor. I like to be right around 80 line amps. I forget what phase. We have been running this for about a year. This is the V2 now that they've come up with. The FW11, we've heard people say crazy things from. They claim 10,000 watts. I have heard people say they're pushing it to 20,000, 22,000. I would say safely 15,000. And the GS11 right above that, I would say anywhere from 15 to 20,000. This should be capable of, again, monitoring your heat. I know, guys, a lot of boring information really fast. Let's just keep running through this, and then we'll get into some gear ratios and what chains I recommend with what motors. If you guys are bored, you can click ahead on the timestamps and get where you need to. And again, I want to point out, throwing more power is draining your battery faster. So again, getting into these bigger motors, you want to have the bigger battery to have amp output along with higher AH to give you range. If you're curious about battery specs, check out the video we've went over on all the numbers and stuff you should know about batteries. Something else I want to talk about really quick too is screws. So when we look at these things, we want to make sure we don't put too long of screws in, because as we can see inside of these motors, you'll end up hitting into things that you don't want if it's too far. So common sense, obviously this is what we're screwing into, so we want to make sure that we're not exceeding that with a little bit of the frame. We're probably sitting about there. If you guys are ordering from companies like Econic Cycles, a lot of them come with the screws needed. Same for the GS11. You want to make sure you're not putting too long of screws in. If you're getting it from Econics, they usually have you set up with the right screws to help you kind of not have issues. Again, we have a discount code in the link tree for those guys, so check that out along with a lot of other companies. And because this is so powerful and torquey, we actually have an extra plate that goes on the front here to try to help reinforce itself from torquing itself out of place. I'm telling you, it's crazy the amount of power that they're able to pack into these small motors. Okay, so we have like right around 132 millimeters for each of these. They're all pretty much the same right there. The KR5V looks to be 133, a hair bigger. Same as the My 1020, 133. So the GS11, like 137, so that might be a tighter fit. But if you look here, they kind of have this indent section, and that's where we see our 134 that we're looking for. And we can kind of see that's for that screw to line up with that front one for the razor plate specifically. So we can see they've maximized about everything that way and just kind of indented that. Now we see right around 105 on the My 1020, it looks like about 106. So when we see that 106, that's where we want to be. Now the FW11 on the inside, it is 106. On this outside, we have a lip, so it's actually bigger on the outside. So if that's something for a custom build that you need to watch out for. Yeah, so the outside, we're about 115. The KR5V, they did a little large on all these spots. We can see about 123 on those wider spots. They did do the fins shorter in here. We kind of helped them with development working with Conray on this, so I tried to keep them from putting the fins too far out. So on top they went with higher fins than on the sides. If you can see, it kind of tampers in on there, so it is still larger than the My 1020. It's kind of hard to get a read on, so we can see we're pretty close there around that 115, but again way larger than the My 1020. And the Sotion also around that 115, just a little bit larger. So if you are really tight using a stock swing arm and stock wheels and going with this kind of like I am with a Det Fab chain delete bracket, you might be limited. We'll get this in the bike at the end of this video and see how this fits. The rest of these I have personally obviously had in Razors and test fit. Okay, so talking about like what chain and gear ratio you should pick, and yes, it's very important. I see these issues very common where we're using the wrong ratio and we're burning up our motors, or we're using the wrong chain and we're blowing through chains, or we're using the wrong chain and again overheating our motor. We see where it's just too much stress and putting too much resistance on our smaller motors and having a hard time. So let's jump into that. Now I put this sheet out a while ago on that video, and I'll put this up as well, but this is kind of my little cheat sheet of what I recommend for you guys as far as ratios. So when we talk about a gear ratio, that's actually the number we're seeing in the decimal form here. And the fraction we're seeing to get that is actually just the front teeth and our rear teeth, which stock on a Razor is 11 front teeth and 80 rear teeth on an H25 size chain. Personally, I think that ratio is the best and only ratio I use for these My 1020 silver motors. That's just what I've had the best luck with. I think it's really dialed as far as what you're going to get out of it. So when we talk about getting it into a fraction, we are just taking 80 divided by 11, and that gives us a 7.2 ratio. So stock is our 7.2. I have color coded that as blue. And again, we can see blue I recommend for the My 1020 motor. Green into the orange, we can see I have there as well. We see a lot of lighter kids use that, and we can see down into like a 1382, changing your front to like a 13 puts you down into those oranger numbers. Now, something I want to mention, the lower you go with the decimal number, is going to give you a higher top speed. Listen, I know 90% of you kids want the highest, best top speed, but there's a cost with lowering that number. The lower you go on this number, you're losing more torque. The more torque you're losing on these bikes creates more stress on the motor to get that motor from 0 miles an hour up to that higher top speed that you have. When we're creating more stress on the motor, that creates heat. And like we talked about previously, these things all are limited by a top heat. So we're gonna heat these up faster, initially melting our phase wires and magnets and giving it issues. And that's kind of why I made the cheat sheet, was because I get asked all the time about this. I mean, all the time. I also get a lot of, hey, my bike takes off really slow and I don't feel a lot of torque. My first question is, what's your gear ratio? A lot of times they answer with, I have a My 1020 motor. They're using something like a 1372 tooth, which is like a 5.5 maybe they're using something even crazier, giving us down to like, I've heard people with like literally a 4.0 ratio, a 3.5, 3.5 ratio. Yeah, you're gonna take off incredibly slow, and it's really hard on your battery and your motor. Your battery is giving all of those consistent amps to get you moving and going rather than a lower or than a higher ratio. It doesn't need to give all that. So you're gonna kill your range, you're gonna kill your battery as far as its longevity, and you're gonna overheat and kill your motor if you don't have the right ratio. So when we start talking about these bigger motors, we can see that I kind of have these other colors recommended. So sometimes these motors are more torquey instead of having higher RPMs. Now, when we have more torque, we can kind of trade that off in our gear ratio, and for say, kind of lower our decimal ratio into something closer to a 6.0 down to a 5.0 and give us more top speed while maintaining torque, because we might have too much torque if we're around a 7.2 ratio. So getting those bigger motors, we want to lower our ratio, equal out the torque while still giving us incredible torque, but gain some top speed and give it more manageable takeoffs. I would say the FW11 falls into play with the GTS 11 recommendations. Electro&Co motors, if you're wondering, I put right with the KR5V and my 1020 somewhere in these ratios. And if you don't understand the color coding, it is just saying I recommend with this motor these colors that I have, and you can see on the sheet these are just different ratios that are common, so these numbers can add up to the same thing. If we take 72 divided by 10, we have a 7.2. Just like if we take 80 divided by 11, we have a 7.2. So this is just kind of giving you guys common ratios that we have or see with other sellers. So you can kind of find yours and see where are you at. Otherwise, just divide your rear teeth by your front teeth, and then you'll kind of know where you come into play as far as the diagram. So again, with that, we have to talk about chain size along with tire size. A lot of us are moving from a 10-inch rim to a 12-inch rim. That's more weight, and then that's more to physically turn. Those things are going to come into effect on the stress of your motor. You know, you're turning, if all those things I just said and you have a bigger wheel on it, you're hurting the motor even more. So, you know, the higher the gear ratio, the less stressful on the motor. And it's kind of about finding that happy spot. When we talk about chain sizes, we have here again from right to left, strongest to weakest in the common sizes we see. This is the stock size. I personally run these still on all of my 1020 style build razors. I keep a spare chain in my backpack with the tools and a link to pop a new one on. If you're doing burnouts, you will snap this chain. It happens, but I have a great time with this, and I get the most out of my motor because it's not turning a bigger chain. Turning a bigger chain is always going to be more restriction and just harder on your motor. So, you know, you obviously don't want to be snapping chains, but you don't want to be doing too large of chains to where, you know, it's tough on your motor. A 420 chain on a My 1020 is asking to kill your motor. You are going to destroy your motor no matter what ratio eventually. It's really hard on it. The number 35 is what I've really moved to as far as all of these motors go. I run a number 35. And really just want to kind of stay between strength, but still having lightweight and just a reliable chain. We see the T8F a lot. The T8F was popular years back before the number 35 got so regularized as far as bolt-on to motors and sprockets for razors. This, to me, I would never recommend to anyone anymore. I think these are trash. We see nothing but issues come out of these all the time. So I don't recommend these. We still see a lot of you guys using them. Some people like them. Me personally, not going to recommend it. It is a little stronger than your stock chain, but I run this H25 over the T8F always. Just my personal preference. Number 35 I run on all of these motors. A lot of them come with the number 35 sprocket as a choice. And we see a 420. The 420 is just a larger, like, motorcycle chain. We see those on like my bigger, you know, 250s or gas bikes. So again, a really good popular chain. 420 we see on, I think, my Alta Sigma, the Arctic Leopard, a lot of the bigger Surons. So very reliable and strong, but again, it's going to be loud, it's going to be clanky, and you can even feel vibration as these chains get bigger, that with big bikes you don't notice, but on Razors you'll feel. So again, kind of a happy medium there. We have the EMF number 35 sprockets we have for these. That's what I'm using on a lot. So I hope that helps you guys. If you guys have any like questions, things that I missed, or things that you didn't quite understand, always leave a comment. I answer all my comments. I'm truly just here to help. I love this community. I love razors. If you don't know me, I'm RazorCrew Cole. In the community, I've been here for a long time, helped thousands of people build razors, and that's what I love to do. So go ahead, hit me up. I'm always here to help. And if I didn't mention, we do have discount codes to a lot of this stuff. We have sponsors in our link tree with companies we work with. Electric Moto family, known as EMF, is my company that we have a lot of plug and play parts for. We do sell the KR5V. It's limited stock. So if you don't see us having it, you're gonna wanna jump over to Econic Cycles. They sell all of these motors we just went through. They take care of their customers the best. They've given us a discount code there in the link tree or in the description down below. If you wanna go over, check those guys out, check all those companies out. Great companies, great discount codes. But till next time, guys, we will see you later. Peace.